Core Principle 3 affirms religious freedom as the most important of our rights. In today's America, it could be said that we have grown accustomed to the idea of religious freedom. It seems most Americans are generally either accepting or somewhat indifferent to the increasingly diverse spectrum of religions in America. However, on a deeper level, if we were to take a survey of 100 people and ask them to explain why religious freedom is important to society, probably the answers would be varied and pretty unclear. In view of the founders, however, religious freedom was probably the most essential right of all. The reasons why they felt that way may not be so clear today. As our nation becomes increasingly secularized, the idea that religion is relevant to the public square is easily dismissed. Case in point, in June of 2002, the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals overturned a 1954 Act of Congress that had inserted the phrase, "under God," after the words, "one nation." The case had been filed by a Mr. Michael Newdow, an atheist whose daughter attended public school in California. When Mr. Newdow was asked why he had filed suit, he said, "I believe in the Constitution, and the Constitution says that our government isn't supposed to be infusing religion into society. So I asked to have that upheld." Newdow was referring to the notion that the First Amendment of the Constitution should separate the church from the state. In the view of most secularists like Newdow, this means that even ideas rooted in religious faith should not be expressed or exert any influence over which is thought to be under the purview of the state. Today, there are two diametrically opposite views of what the founders had intended the role of religion to be in American society. On the one side are people with similar views as Mr. Newdow, and on the other side are those that believe the founders recognized the importance of a public affirmation of the Creator and religion as being very essential to the Republic. As Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration, had said, "The only foundation for a republic is to be laid in religion. Without this there can be no virtue, and without virtue there can be no liberty, and liberty is the object and life of all republican governments." It was a sentiment that was frequently expressed by Washington, Madison, Adams, Jefferson, and many of the founding fathers. Then, which is it? Which view is valid? In order to have an undistorted view of America, it's essential to understand the role religion has played throughout our history. What then? What were the circumstances and the ideas that led to the formulation of the American ideal of religious liberty? America was founded by people who experienced having great restrictions imposed upon their exercise of religious faith and practice in their countries of origin. They saw America as a bright new land where they could worship God as they wished, in obedience to His Word, as they understood it. It was their standard of faith that compelled them to stay true to every jot and tittle of their sacred doctrines. In their faith perspective, it was God's Word alone that could serve as the basis for a viable social compact. In other words, unless the citizens were to uphold the exact same divine understanding and focus upon God's Word, there was no other basis, in their view, for the establishment of a society that could be pleasing to God. In time, this presented a problem. As colonial America grew in numbers and in the diversity of faiths and doctrines, the 13 colonies had independently established their own separate official religion within almost each of the colonies. The dominant sect established within a colony would oppress the believers of the minority faiths much in the same way as they had experienced religious persecution in their former nations. Thus, oppression or persecution of other faiths was common in virtually every colony. The civil governments of the colonies were typically relentless in their persecution of religious dissenters, exiling the likes of Anne Hutchinson and Roger Williams for their outspoken criticism of Puritanism, and whipping Baptists or lopping off the ears of Quakers because of their faithful evangelical zeal. Official persecution reached its zenith between 1659 and 1661, when Massachusetts Puritans executed 4 Quaker missionaries by hanging. In their view, any compromise or any alteration of the accepted divine focus upon God's Word would result in the disapproval of God and cause his eventual withdrawal of his blessings from their society. Although sincere in their faith, the exercise of this notion brought about a bitter and dark period of religious bigotry in America. The effects of this tragic past could still be felt at the time of the founders. It was far from the ideal of the shining city upon a hill. It was the Declaration of Independence that proclaimed a new social compact, one that transcended religious boundaries. However, it was the blood and struggle of the Revolutionary War that brought America its first significant breakthrough in the practice of religious freedom. Under the command and vision of General George Washington, an unprecedented level of tolerance and mutual respect was established within the ranks of the Continental Army. It was an imperative not only ordered by Washington, but also demanded by the harsh realities of war. Washington knew that religious infighting between his troops would be disastrous for overall morale and military effectiveness. At that time, the ranks of the Continental Army included soldiers of many faiths: Dutch Reform from New York, Baptists from Rhode Island, Presbyterians from New Jersey, Congregationalists from Connecticut, Catholics from Maryland, and Anglicans from Virginia and the Carolinas. After the war, Washington would bring this same perspective as the president of the Constitutional Convention, overseeing the ratification process of the Constitution, and later as the first president of the United States. For all of the representatives of the colonies gathered for the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, one of the most essential and daunting tasks they faced was how to ensure that the new federal government would not impede the free exercise of religious faith, while at the same time staying neutral to all manner of religious expression. James Madison, in Memorial and Remonstrance, frames the dilemma thusly. He said, "Who does not see that the same authority which can establish Christianity in exclusion of all other religions may establish with the same ease any particular sect of Christians in exclusion of all other sects?" How would it be possible to avoid the eventual unraveling of the Union, each state pulled by the doctrinal and ecclesiastic authority of the dominant faith? Could this new social compact, centered upon the common principles of the Declaration and secured by the Constitution, be strong enough to maintain a sense of common national destiny under the protection of divine providence? 2 years after the ratification of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights was ratified. Its First Amendment enshrined the guarantee of religious freedom in America with these words: "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." Its meaning is still debated to this day. Many point to Jefferson's letter to the Baptist Association of Danbury, Connecticut, in which he made his now famous reference to the wall of separation between church and state. Some will argue that this reveals the founders' original intent to cordon off religion and its influence from the public square. However, clearly, the founders were advocating a form of government that would be neutral to organized religious bodies, but not neutral to the idea of God and religious principles as the foundation of society. As Washington clearly expressed, as adamant as he was clear in his farewell address, he said, "Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle." Harry V. Jaffa, Distinguished Fellow of the Claremont Institute, writing in his article, "The American Founding as the Best Regime," explains it very well. He said, by removing theological differences from the political arena, men could worship God freely according to the dictates of their consciences. But however differently they might conceive of the divine attributes, there was a common understanding of morality underlying or transcending religious differences. This common understanding of morality at the core of religion, or as Washington had referred to it as the national morality, was what the founders sought to establish as the social compact of the new nation. It was codified in the Declaration as the laws of nature and of nature's God, whereas when the colonies had been anchored in their own particular separate divine focus, unity between the colonies was unachievable. However, by establishing a shared social compact based upon universal principles common to all faiths, a shared vision to build a civil society became the dream of all Americans. As Professor Jaffa indicated, religious freedom in America recognizes that we will not all understand the divine attributes in the same way. Every faith institution has its own sacred divine focus and its unique doctrines and traditions. However, Washington had proved with the Continental Army that an institution comprised of many faiths could still be subject to the protection of the one divine providence. Likewise, for the new nation, also comprised of many faiths, but equally secured, if only it would remain a moral and ethical nation pleasing to God. The hope for a revived America is rooted in her founding ideals, which are not just political and secular, but are also spiritual. Today, America's hot flame of liberty appears to be but a faint and flickering light that has been dimmed by the punishing hard rains of secularism and immorality. Yet there still remains, beneath the matted ash, the smoldering hot coals of the eternal principles upon which the nation was founded. If we dig deep beneath the hardened surface, we will find them burning still. And if we lay upon them the fresh fuel of our passionate hearts, which still long for liberty, a new flame will ignite and burst forth. It is in this area of civil focus that the Coalition for American Renewal seeks to establish a multi-faith partnership to renew the social compact upon which the nation was founded. For this reason, we uphold our core principle number 3. Religious freedom is one of the most essential rights. Thank you for your kind attention. I hope that this will be a great foundation for a stimulating and fruitful discussion. Have a great meeting and a great day.